This is a Souls-ass Souls game. I have to say, honestly, it hasn't been since Dark Souls 1 that I've played a game like this that's really pulled me in early on. And right now, my first impressions are pretty damn good. But I want to expand upon that. I don't want to just sit here and say, hey, I think the game's good. I want to tell you why I think it's good in the 10 or so hours that I've played thus far. My opinions can, of course, change as time goes on. The more time I spend with it, maybe I'll start to see some of those kinks in the armor that aren't as good as maybe they could be. But right now, the three pillars that make these games for me, the combat, the enemies, and the world, have all been very impressive. I'm going to start off, though, with what I probably think is the least impressive, mainly because it's just more of the same, and that's the combat. It's Souls combat. You know what to expect here. And maybe that's what makes it great, though. Maybe it not changing much is actually the positive. We've got our light and heavy attacks, our jump attacks, our roll attacks, there's backstabbing. There's also the different types of rolls, the light and nimble fast roll, or the slow and heavy fat roll. But then in addition to this, they've added this one interesting mechanic of these special weapon skills. So these skills are unique to individual weapons, and some weapons will share similar skills, but overall, most of the weapons that I picked up have had their own unique modifiers. Basically, you use up this mana resource to enable a unique effect depending on your weapon. So I had a battle axe that increased, gave me a buff to attack damage. I also have this giant polearm type weapon that gives me a big continuous whirlwind. And then there's various fencing type weapons that allow you to enable a stance, basically altering how your light and heavy attacks work. There's a whole variety of weapon special abilities, and these even extend into shields. A majority of shields will have a parry effect. In fact, that's worth noting. You can't parry with every weapon. You need specifically a certain type of shield. But just last night, I picked up a shield that I can slam into the ground and charge forward, knocking an enemy back with. So besides having the basic standard Dark Souls combat of the light and heavy attacks and everything we talked about, everything that you know, we now have these special alterations to give us unique abilities and really change up our playstyles. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't touching a shield, but since I picked up this dragon shield or whatever it was called, I can slam this thing into the ground and charge forward and knock people back, dealing damage to them? That's pretty badass. I might have to start using this, I'm not gonna lie. Now, to go along with this, these special weapon skills do use up this mana resource, and as a result, we now have two types of Estus flasks. One's that restore health, and one that's restore your mana, which I think might be called Ashes. I'm actually not sure, but it's basically mana, whatever. So, yeah, you basically have a cap of Estus flasks total, and then you can divvy it up how you choose. If you want more health ones, if you want more mana ones, you can alter that to your liking. Combat, while it is mostly more of the same, it's what you expect Dark Souls to be, it's how you expect it to play. In fact, for that reason, I've started to feel like this game has started off a little bit easier than I expect from a Souls game, but that's probably mostly because I'm so familiar and used to the combat at this point, it can't help but get easier over time. But with that addition of these special weapon skills, I do really feel like it's going to add a lot of variety and a lot of interesting ways to change up the way that you play and the combat in this game. Next, I'd like to move on to the enemies. This is the second big pillar for me that really makes these games. And I have to say, in Dark Souls 3, they are rather grotesque and menacing. Now, there are some of the standard basic enemies. You've got your dogs and rats and your knights, but then there's also some very memorable ones. There are these pygmies wearing executioner hoods, and some of them shoot darts at you, charge at you with these daggers, or wield big two-handed swords. They're fast and can be very punishing if you let them get too close. And then we've got these butchers with giant pots of meat that they hurl at you, and then after they've done that, they whip out these freaking giant handsaws that they use to charge at you to try to chop you up. And as with each of these games, there's also your sort of, your docile thrall type characters that don't do much. However, some of those can turn into these abominations if not engaged quickly enough. Overall, I've really found most of the enemy types to be interesting and memorable, and that's really going to be a key word going throughout my impressions here. There's a lot of things that have been very memorable so far. including the mini-bosses that are no joke. In fact, just out the gate at the tutorial area, you get this mini-boss to the right-hand side who's like this frost lizard thing that Armadillo charges at you and freezes you to death, and he was a pain in the ass. He took me a couple attempts to take down. Now, the actual bosses, I'm not gonna lie, the first two, largely forgettable. There's a knight, yeah, he turns into this abomination thing, but he's just a basic knight and he jumps and whatever. And the second boss was a frost dog, which I'd basically already seen one of those. I saw the Frost Armadillo mini-boss, and this kind of felt just like a larger version of that same thing. But the third boss, this tree thing with this fungus all over that you gotta target, and he's got all these enemies charging at you in the first phase, and then when you get him down part way, he freaking slams the ground and tunnels you into this pit. It's just like, it was awesome. It was, that's just the best word to describe it. Very awesome boss fight, very memorable, and one that I really enjoyed. So I'm hoping that going forward, future boss fights are less like those first two and more like this tree guy, because he was fun to fight. And then the last big thing that I want to touch on is the world itself and the characters. 3 words: engaging, engrossing, and awesome. I need you guys to know that I've really loved the first Dark Souls, but Dark Souls 2, it actually didn't hold my attention for the first couple hours, and for that reason, I just didn't continue to play it. And I think a large part of the reason for that was the world design. It didn't pull me in. I didn't find the areas and locations that we saw early on interesting enough to have the desire to continue to go through and see the rest. Every single spot so far, I guess with the exception of the tutorial area, you start off in this pit and then you go fight the knight and then you go into the Firelink Shrine, which the Firelink Shrine is actually pretty cool here. We'll talk about that in a second. But outside of the tutorial area, starting off with the Undead Village, going through all, I mean, that was like, when I first saw the Undead Village, it looked eerily inhabited. I just was like, wow, there's a bunch of creeps that live over there. And the design of the village and the buildings within it and just its setting up in the hills, very cool. And then after that area, I've just recently stepped foot into what's a forest area. And I can already tell I'm going to love this. The forest in the original Dark Souls was one of my favorite places. Creepy, menacing, and I'm getting that same vibe here. We've got these creatures that painfully sprout wings and then just jump in your face and start hacking at it. It's pretty scary, actually. So the Firelink Shrine is a central hub area. It's one of the first things you come across after you go through what's considered basically the tutorial zone. And this basically appears to be an area where all of your favorite NPCs in the game are going to come to gather as you encounter them. We've got our blacksmith to repair and reinforce and enhance our weapons and take care of our armor. We've got vendors selling various trinkets and goods and consumables. There's this new bay to help us upgrade our character. The level up character. I don't even know her name. She's adorable, though. Just basically all the pertinent stuff. In fact, we also have this new boss weapon mechanic. It might not be new. Again, I didn't really play much of Dark Souls 2. We've got this boss weapon mechanic, and there's an NPC, and you can go to him with the souls of bosses you've defeated in order to purchase these specialty weapons. And again, just like other weapons in this game, they're going to have their unique abilities besides their light and heavy attacks, etc. So yeah, guys, overall, my first impressions of Dark Souls 3 have been incredibly positive. 10 hours that I put in thus far have me very excited to continue to play the game and basically wrap up this experience. I've heard some concerning things. I've heard people say that the game is relatively short, and that some people with the PS4 version have already finished it. And again, something else that could be of concern is that the combat is what you expect. And some people just don't like the Dark Souls combat, so if you haven't liked it before, it's not changed much here. We just have some additional unique things with the new weapons. But overall, it's, as I said at the top, it's a Souls-ass Souls game. You know if you're gonna like a Souls game, but the good thing here is that this appears to be one that's well put together on my first impressions. I'm going to continue playing this game, and I will be sure to follow up with you guys, letting you know how I think after all is said and done. But so far, this is looking like a winner, and I'm really enjoying it. If you guys would like to watch me play through, there's gonna be some stuff on stream, and I'm gonna be doing some follow-up videos as well with some additional conversations about this game. But for right now, my first impressions, thumbs up. I'm loving it, and I can't wait to keep going. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. Hope you all have a fantastic afternoon, and until next time, I'll see you later.